To understand the man who would come to command Russia for decades, one must first look to the harsh realities of his beginnings. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, in 1952, a city still bearing the deep, unhealed scars of the devastating World War II siege. His family, like so many others, lived in a communal apartment, sharing a kitchen and a bathroom with several other families. This environment was not one of comfort or privilege. It was a daily lesson in survival, competition, and the necessity of carving out one's own space in a crowded, often unforgiving world. His parents were factory workers, and he was their third son, the only one to survive childhood, a fact that undoubtedly shaped the intense focus they placed upon him. The streets of his youth were a proving ground, a tough, gritty landscape where fights were common, and respect was earned through strength, not given freely. Young Putin was small for his age, which made him an easy target for bullies. This experience instilled in him an early, powerful lesson: weakness invites aggression. He learned that to be safe, one had to be formidable, to project an aura of toughness that would deter any potential challenges. This was not a matter of choice, but of necessity. His world was a concrete jungle, where the unwritten rules of the courtyard were often more important than the formal laws of the state, teaching him the value of quick thinking and decisive action in moments of conflict. This drive to overcome his physical limitations led him to the world of martial arts, specifically Sambo and later Judo. He threw himself into his training with a singular, almost obsessive dedication. The dojo became his sanctuary, a structured environment where clear rules governed combat and advancement was based on skill and discipline, not social standing or brute force. Here he learned more than just fighting techniques. He absorbed a philosophy. Judo taught him to use an opponent's weight and momentum against them, to remain calm under pressure, and to find the precise moment to strike. These principles, patience, leverage, and the exploitation of an adversary's weakness, would become hallmarks of his future political style. His childhood, therefore, was not merely a backdrop, but the very crucible in which his personality was forged. The constant struggle for resources in the communal apartment, the raw survival instincts honed in street brawls, and the disciplined control mastered on the judo mat all combined to create a specific kind of individual. He became someone who was quiet, observant, and deeply aware of power dynamics. He learned to trust few, to conceal his intentions, and to believe that the only reliable path to security was through the accumulation of personal strength and the unwavering will to use it when necessary. These early lessons in hardship and self-reliance would define the man and the leader he was to become. From a young age, Vladimir Putin was captivated by the romanticized image of the intelligence officer, a figure he saw in Soviet spy films as a patriot serving the state from the shadows. This ambition was not a fleeting fancy. It became the central organizing principle of his adolescence and early adulthood. He famously walked into a local KGB office as a teenager to ask how he could join, only to be told that the agency did not accept walk-ins and that he should pursue a law degree. He took this advice with the utmost seriousness, enrolling in the law faculty at Leningrad State University, a path chosen not out of a passion for jurisprudence, but as a calculated stepping stone toward his ultimate goal. This demonstrated a remarkable focus and long-term planning for someone so young. Upon graduating from university, his ambition was finally realized. He was recruited into the KGB, the powerful and feared security agency of the Soviet Union. His initial years were spent in counterintelligence in his native Leningrad, a period of rigorous training and indoctrination into the clandestine world. Here, he learned the essential tradecraft of an operative: surveillance, recruitment of informants, analysis, and most importantly, the art of manipulation and psychological assessment. The KGB was more than a job. It was an institution that reshaped one's identity, demanding total loyalty to the system and teaching its members to view the world as a constant struggle between allies and enemies, with deception as a primary tool of statecraft. His career eventually took him abroad to Dresden, East Germany, in the mid-1980s. While Dresden was not a major center of espionage like Berlin, his time there was formative. His official role was to foster connections and gather intelligence, operating under the cover of a diplomat. It was in Dresden that he witnessed the slow, inexorable decay of Soviet power firsthand. He saw the stark contrast between the vibrant consumer economy of West Germany and the stagnation of the Eastern Bloc. This experience cemented his belief in the importance of state strength and control, as he watched helplessly when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989 and angry crowds surrounded the KGB headquarters, with no clear orders coming from a paralyzed Moscow. The collapse of the Soviet Union was a profound and deeply personal blow for Putin, an event he would later call the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century. It represented the failure of the system to which he had dedicated his life. His return to a chaotic and diminished Russia in the early 1990s left him disillusioned and without a clear purpose. The skills he had perfected in the KGB, discretion, loyalty, the ability to operate effectively behind the scenes, and a deep-seated suspicion of Western motives, were all he had left. These were the very attributes that would soon make him surprisingly valuable in the new, turbulent world of Russian politics, providing him with a unique toolkit for navigating the treacherous post-Soviet landscape. After resigning from the active KGB reserves, Vladimir Putin returned to Leningrad, which would soon revert to its historical name, St. Petersburg. He needed a new career, and his path led him back to his alma mater, Leningrad State University, where he took a position in international affairs. It was here that he reconnected with his former law professor Anatoly Sobchak, who had become a leading democratic reformer and the city's first democratically elected mayor. Sobchak, recognizing Putin's quiet competence and disciplined work ethic, invited him to become an advisor. This marked Putin's formal entry into the world of politics, a transition from the clandestine operations of the KGB to the public administration of a major city. Working in the St. Petersburg mayor's office, Putin quickly proved himself to be an indispensable administrator. He was given the crucial portfolio of managing foreign relations and attracting international investment, a difficult task in the chaotic economic climate of the early 1990s. He was known not for grand speeches or charismatic public appearances, but for his behind-the-scenes effectiveness. Colleagues described him as the Grey Cardinal, a quiet but powerful figure who got things done without drawing attention to himself. He was meticulous, reliable, and fiercely loyal to his boss, Sobchak, shielding him from political attacks and navigating the complex bureaucracy with the skill of a seasoned operative. This period was a critical apprenticeship in the mechanics of power within the new Russia. Putin learned how to manage competing interests, build alliances, and deal with the emerging class of oligarchs and business figures who were carving up the remnants of the Soviet economy. His KGB background gave him a distinct advantage. He understood how to gather information, assess people's motivations and weaknesses, and operate with a degree of discretion that was rare among the flamboyant politicians of the era. He cultivated a reputation for being a man of his word, someone who could be trusted to carry out a task efficiently and without fuss, a valuable quality in a time of widespread corruption and instability. When Sobchak lost his re-election bid in 1996, Putin demonstrated a defining characteristic: loyalty. He resigned from his position immediately, refusing offers to work for the new administration. This act did not go unnoticed. His steadfastness to his defeated mentor impressed powerful figures in Moscow who were looking for reliable people to bring into the federal government. His time in St. Petersburg had served its purpose. He had successfully transitioned from an intelligence agent to a skilled political operator, proving his capabilities outside the secretive confines of the KGB. His reputation for quiet efficiency and unwavering loyalty was about to pave his way to the very center of Russian power. Putin's move to Moscow in 1996 marked the beginning of a meteoric and honestly almost unbelievable rise through the ranks of the federal government. He was initially brought into the Presidential Property Management Department, which on the surface sounded like a pretty mundane administrative role. But his work ethic and the connections he had cultivated did not go unnoticed in the court of President Boris Yeltsin. He was quickly promoted to more significant positions within the presidential administration, and then, in 1998, was appointed head of the FSB, the main successor agency to the KGB. This put him right back in his element, at the helm of the country's powerful security apparatus, a position from which he could, exert some serious influence. The Russia of the late 1990s was a country on its knees, plagued by economic collapse, political instability, and this deep sense of national humiliation. President Yeltsin's health was failing, and his inner circle, often called the family, was desperately searching for a successor who could protect their interests and, crucially, restore a sense of order to the nation. Putin, with his background in security, his reputation for loyalty, and his lack of a strong independent political base, seemed like the perfect candidate. He was seen as a technocrat, a steady hand who would follow instructions. In August 1999, in a move that absolutely stunned political observers, Yeltsin dismissed his prime minister and appointed the virtually unknown Vladimir Putin to the post. As prime minister, Putin was immediately tested. A series of apartment bombings in Russian cities, which the government blamed on Chechen terrorists, created this climate of national fear and outrage. Putin responded with decisive and honestly ruthless force, launching the Second Chechen War with that now famous promise to waste the terrorists in the outhouse. His tough, uncompromising stance resonated powerfully with a Russian public weary of chaos and yearning for a strong leader. His approval ratings soared. He transformed overnight from an obscure bureaucrat into a popular national figure, really the embodiment of the state's renewed determination to impose order at any cost. The final act of this rapid ascent came on New Year's Eve, 1999. In a dramatic televised address, Boris Yeltsin announced his immediate resignation and named Vladimir Putin as acting president. The transfer of power was as sudden as it was unexpected. The man who just a few years earlier had been a mid-level city official was now the leader of the world's largest country. To many, he was still an enigma, a man without a public face or a clear ideology. But his actions had already spoken louder than words, signaling the arrival of a new era of centralized control and assertive national pride, a stark departure from the turbulent Yeltsin years. Upon becoming president, Vladimir Putin's primary mission was to reverse the decline of the previous decade and rebuild the power of the Russian state. He moved swiftly to rein in the regional governors and wealthy oligarchs who had, honestly, amassed immense influence under Yeltsin, re-centralizing authority in the Kremlin. This consolidation of power was accompanied by economic reforms and, was really buoyed by rising global oil prices, which fueled a period of significant growth and improved living standards for many Russians. These early years established his image at home as a restorer of stability and national dignity, the leader who had pulled Russia back from the brink of collapse and made pensions and salaries get paid on time. A central theme of his long rule has been the projection of Russian strength beyond its borders, often in direct opposition to what he views as Western encroachment. This was evident in his brutal but ultimately successful campaign to crush the separatist movement in Chechnya. It was demonstrated more dramatically in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea following a pro-Western revolution in Ukraine, an act that was wildly popular in Russia but drew international condemnation and sanctions. This move signaled a new, more aggressive foreign policy, one determined to re-establish a Russian sphere of influence and challenge the post-Cold War order. His actions were framed as a defense of Russian-speaking populations and a correction of historical injustices. The culmination of this assertive foreign policy came in February 2022 with the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, an action that shattered decades of relative peace in Europe and triggered the most severe confrontation with the West since the Cold War. This war, which he termed a special military operation, aimed to prevent Ukraine's alignment with NATO and reassert Russian dominance. While the conflict has boosted his approval ratings at home, it has turned Russia into a pariah state for many in the international community, leading to crippling economic sanctions and, honestly, providing a new sense of unity and purpose for the NATO alliance, the very thing he sought to weaken. As of today, June 25, 2025, Vladimir Putin's story is far from over. He remains firmly in control, having secured his rule until at least 2030 and cultivating high domestic approval despite significant military setbacks and international isolation. His legacy is, deeply polarized. To many Russians, he is the strong leader who restored their nation's pride and sovereignty. To much of the outside world, he is an authoritarian aggressor who has destabilized global security and trampled on international law. The boy from the Leningrad courtyard who learned to fight for his place has reshaped his country and the world around it, and the final chapters of his rule are still being written in real time.